This is Paul Carr for the Huffington Post. I want to talk about Criss Angel. I was going to write something about Criss Angel, but I've just come out of his show not that long ago, and I just want to do this while it's fresh in my mind because I don't know how Criss Angel does it. By which I mean I don't know how he stands on stage every night. Knowing he's performing the most consistently badly reviewed show in Las Vegas. I don't know how he looks his audience in the eye, knowing that they've spent. I think the price on my ticket was $135. Although thank God, Cirque du Soleil kindly gave it me for free. I know how he looks people who have paid that in the eye. It's about $500 to take a family to see his show. And spews out the kind of unfunny nonsense that he spews and performs the kind of unmiraculous, I think he calls them demonstrations, of ineptitude that he performs. And then at the end of the show, he demands, and I mean demands, he literally says, stand up. He demands a standing ovation from his audience. And people are sort of too polite not to give him one. I know how he does it. I would have killed myself. I have to say, months ago. I gather a week or so ago, he actually walked off stage and went home during one of his own shows, and they had to do an announcement saying, "We're sorry, the Criss Angel Believe show is over because our star has walked off." But generally, he does it every night, and I'm impressed. So let me just say, I know the world doesn't need another negative review of Criss Angel's show. You type Criss Angel Believe into Google, and it's all negative reviews. On Yelp, it's all 1 and 2 star reviews. On TripAdvisor, even it's like the 375th best show in Vegas. But here's the thing: I went into Criss Angel's Believe wanting to enjoy it. I wanted to be the only person who came out of it enjoying it because, and I often admit this. But I really like magic. I actually used to, when I was like 18, 19 years old, I used to be really into it. Partly because it's a great way to get girls, if you do it well. And partly because I just like for the same reason I now like technology. You know that sort of experience you have where you show somebody a cool app on an iPhone? That's what showing somebody a cool magic trick does. It's like the idea that you have something to show them that's going to blow their mind. And with magic, you have the added advantage of they can't do it. So I've been fascinated by magic for years. I've read a lot of books on it. I've performed more card tricks than a man should admit to performing. So I really wanted to go in and say, yeah, you know what? He dresses like a douche. He's way too old to be still wearing a bandana. He looks, by the way, he looks like Jerry Sadowitz in a bandana. Except, of course, Jerry Sadowitz can do magic very well and is funny. But I wanted to say, despite that, despite the douchey punchlines, despite the, are you ready crap, and despite all of that, at least he's a great magician, and people should give him credit for being a great magician. But he isn't. And this is what I'm actually blown away by how not technically good he is. Because I've seen his Mind Freak show, and there was some really inventive stuff well performed, and I now realise just how good an editor and presumably a producer and presumably a magic consultant he had on that show, because this show proudly boasts to be created and written by Criss Angel, and it's really bad. He does he does a thing at the beginning where he makes a girl vanish, and he basically this evening, I won't give it away because that's not fair on the person who actually created it, but he basically performs it in such a way that it's very obvious how it works, and he actually screwed it up even more tonight. He opens the show by sort of levitating down from the roof on what is obviously a wire. He does a lot of stuff on black backgrounds with flashing lights. So basically, you can't see how it's done because you can't see anything. Like you have two big spots on your eyes. So yeah, he's just not technically all that good. He does a razor blade. He does the razor blades thing where you swallow razor blades and then produce them all out on a thread, which is a standard of magic. It goes back God, I don't know, it probably goes back to Thurston. It goes back years, centuries. And he does it in such a pedestrian and such a bad way that you just think, you're just not very good at magic. Any kind of magic. And yet, Cirque du Soleil gave you something obscene. I want to say 100 million, it can't be. Maybe 10 million. To do this show. And I feel just so sorry for Cirque du Soleil, because I've now seen almost all of the Cirque shows. I saw Love the other night, and it was just spectacular. I mean, like, everything people say about Love is true. I saw Card, I've done videos about that. Even Mystere, which is an old show now, like, it's full of people at the top of their game, doing amazing feats. Like, this is like somebody that's so far at the bottom of their game that I think I tweeted when I came out, that was so poor that poverty wants to make it history. And not only was it poor, but it was insulting to the audience. It's like, he comes out and he might as well come out and say, hello, you fucking idiots, here's a bad show because it's all you deserve. It's so bad that it is insulting. And that said, given that all the reviews are so negative, he might have a point. Maybe now, I mean, the theatre was pretty full, and admittedly half of the audience were his plants. He has to stop lying and bringing... I mean, David Copperfield uses plants for things like flying and whatever, because you can't have a real person from the audience suspended up in the rafters. But he uses stooges for everything, and he chooses them in a really clumsy way. There's one moment, and I am giving something away, but it's like the James Randi thing of he's lying to you, so I'm going to give this away. He does a bit where he says, I'm going to pick 2 people from the audience, and the way I'm going to do it, and it's so convoluted, the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to, I have 12 pieces of paper or whatever, and 2 of them have his little Criss Angel anarchy symbol on them. And I'm going to screw those up and put them in amongst it, and then I'm going to throw them all out into the audience. And the 2 audience members that get the anarchy symbols will come up to help me with this illusion. And you see it, first of all, he only ever shows that one of the pieces of paper he screws up has the anarchy thing. You have to take his word that 2 of them do. And second of all, you see him very obviously palm out the second one. So obviously the Stooges already have their predetermined one. He then brings them up on stage as the audience's representatives to show that he's not lying, thus completely ruining the point of the trick. It's meaningless, as is everything else he does with a member of the audience, because they're all Stooges. It's ridiculous. He gets a kid up from the audience at one point who may not be a Stooge, and then just basically embarrasses the kid, and then whether he's a Stooge or not, and then uses him to basically promote his fucking shitty magic set. Anyway, look, enough about Criss Angel. The point is, I really wanted to say he is a terrible showman, but a technically very good magician, and I can't. It's a terrible show. It's bad magic. It's insulting to the audience, and it isn't funny. He has this sort of weird Mexican clown guy who follows him around. I gather he has like a big Mexican following, Criss Angel, because there were points where even like 2 or 3 of the jokes were in Spanish. I didn't even know what they were. The rest of them were just basically cock gags, which translates into any language. But yeah, I mean, so maybe I'm not Spanish enough to understand why it's funny, but one of the jokes was he talks about he does a cutting the girl in half thing, and he does, which I think is an old David Copperfield joke. He says, I always keep the bottom half. But then he takes it to like a creepy extent where he starts like asking plants again from the audience whether he can cut them in half. And he's like, how old are you, honey? And one girl was like 25. He's like, is that your husband next to you? Yes. And he says to the husband, which half do you want? The half that talks or the half that doesn't talk? It's hilarious. And then he does it again, and the girl, and again, a plant, the girl says, oh, I'm 14. And he says, oh, that's too young. And the Mexican clown says, oh, not in Mexico. Because fucking 14-year-olds is about as funny as Criss Angel gets. But here's the thing. Fortunately, I came to Vegas wanting to see... It's the only town on Earth where magicians in large numbers can still get residencies. So I really want to see some good magic. And thank God I saw last night Penn Teller. Now, Penn Teller, I've always loved. They're just fucking brilliant magicians, and they really are brilliant magicians. They appear to be... I've met Penn very briefly once. I've never met Teller. But they seem like really genuinely nice people. And I went to see their show last night at the Rio. Now, they don't have $100 million to spend on their stuff. It's clear the Rio doesn't have the budget. And the show is quite pared down compared to their Broadway stuff or their TV special. But every single second of it is just fucking brilliant. There's one illusion they do called helium, where Teller is put inside a plastic garbage bag. And a member of the audience holds the top of the bag while Penn fills the bag with helium while Teller's inside. And obviously helium is not a good gas to be breathing for a long period of time. And anyway, Teller's in the bag, and he pitches it. The Penn Teller pitch it as an escape, and in an instant there's a flash of light, and suddenly Teller is standing next to the bag, and the bag is now no longer having Teller's weight in it. It's now floating above the guy who was holding its head, and it's just so perfectly conceived, so creatively done, so magically perfect. And then the guy's told to let go of the bag, and it spends the rest of the show bobbing around on the ceiling. There's a bit with a ball. Teller does a bit called the Miser's Dream. He doesn't call it that. That's what it's called. Magicians will know what that is. Where coins are in the old version, is coins are pulled out of the air. They do a version with a tank of water, where Teller puts his hand through a tank of water, pulls out a handful of water, which turns into coins. He then finishes off by... I won't spoil it, but he then finishes off with a brilliantly done production, and it's just... I came out of the show just being like, this is how magic should be done. But not only that, but the difference between Penn and Teller and Criss Angel, apart from about $99 million, is Penn and Teller very clearly have a huge amount of respect for their audience. At no point were any jokes done at the expense of audience members. As far as I could tell, the majority, if not all, of the audience members were legitimately members of the audience. There's a query over a bit at the beginning with the box, but the vast majority of the show is not prepared, not using stooges. It's really political. It's bizarrely political. There's a few bits about the Fourth Amendment. There's some really nice libertarian sort of rants in there. If I hadn't seen Absinthe, I'd say Penn and Teller was my favourite show in Vegas. Absinthe just slightly takes it, but Penn and Teller is easily my second favourite show in Vegas. Criss Angel needs to go and see Penn and Teller, and he needs to sit quietly and think about what he's done, and think about the amount of money he is asking from an audience he has nothing but contempt for, and then he needs to skulk off quietly and not be a magician anymore.